Would you be willing to spend 44 days in jail to avoid giving the passcode to your phone to a police officer? Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentleman William Montanez, had to answer that question for himself. As it turns out, he is in Tampa, Florida, and is no stranger to the police there. They pulled him over. They found that he was in possession of some amount of marijuana, also some THC oil, which is a felony. The marijuana is a misdemeanor. And they found that he had a firearm in the glove box. And so they noticed when they confiscated his phone that there was a message on there that said, OMG, did they find it? And they demanded that Mr. Montanez open the phone with his passcode, which he refused to do. Eventually, he was held in contempt and jailed, where he remained for 44 days. And I'll tell you, as it turns out, the THC and gun charges were dropped, and the contempt order got tossed, but he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor pot charge. Stephen Green, Mr. Montanez says he regrets nothing because he stood up for his own rights, and there was no way he was going to turn over his passcode and expose possibly his girlfriend and maybe a whole lot more. Do you think that this kind of libertarian attitude is going to be healthy, especially if it lets criminals get away with crime?
You know, Apple, this is a year or two ago now, took a very unpopular stand. One of these mass shooters had planned everything on his iPhone, or had taken pictures or whatever it was of the atrocity he committed out there in California. And local officials and the FBI insisted that Apple create a tool that had never existed before to crack open this iPhone so they could get to this terrorist personal information. And, you know, I felt like the old Jewish guy who wrote a check to the ACLU when they were defending the Illinois Nazis who wanted to march. He sent them a check for $100, $1,000, whatever it said, along with a letter that said, "Let the sons of bitches march," or words to that effect. And I feel the exact same way. You know, yes, the police can get warrants to get particular items that they may use against you because they believe you may be guilty of a crime. But the amount of data in a phone, you know, if the police get a warrant to crack open my safe, which is, you know, locked like an iPhone is locked, but physically instead of digitally, because they suspect that there is a piece of damning paperwork where I wrote, "I killed my wife," or, you know, whatever the heinous crime is. They absolutely have the right.
Killed your wife?
No, she's at work right now. She's fine, I swear. Anyway,
Sorry, didn't interrupt.
There's a huge difference between that and breaking into somebody's phone, which contains even if it's legally done, which has literally your entire life on it. I mean, I can't even imagine what is on everybody's phone. And the thing is, I don't want to. It's on their phone for a reason. The stuff they want to show me, you know, they'll put that up on their screensaver on the I love me wall behind them and all the rest. There are things we just don't want to know about each other. And in this day and age where, what's the statistic now? The average human being just trying to conduct business in their daily lives commits something like 3 felonies a day. Everybody is guilty of something. Everybody is guilty of something. And if the police can go on a fishing expedition like this, then I am dead set against it, and I don't care what else they find in my car. And if all it takes to compel me to unlock my phone is a text message that the police didn't like, then I think that's the end of being reasonably secure in our persons and our effects.
Now, Bill Whittle, I know that you're a law and order kind of guy, and the law has generally, according to this NBC News story, by the way, the law has generally been interpreted as protecting data that someone possesses, including the contents of their minds, such as passcodes. But some police have tried to force people to open their phones using biometrics like thumbprints. And judges, in some cases, have refused to sign warrants forcing people to open their phones using Face ID by just looking into the phone. I think this gets into some sticky territory for somebody who is in favor of individual rights, but also in favor of law and order. The law enforcement officials are saying, we can't stop violent criminals if you don't let us hack into or force them to hack into their own cell phones. Where do you come down on this, Bill?
Well, I have no doubt that this gentleman is guilty of a number of crimes, and that if they'd gotten access to his phone, they would have found evidence of a great many other crimes that they could have solved. But I am with this guy 100%. The idea of the government forcing you to it's almost a Fifth Amendment issue, really, when you get right down to it. It's almost a self-incrimination issue, really. And I completely agree with Steve's point. If a judge were to issue a warrant in order to break into my office and in search of a specific document, that's how the law works. And if there's sufficient indication that's necessary, then the warrant would be approved. But that doesn't give you the right to also go through my photo books and my phone connections and a history of where I've been and who I talked to and all the rest of it. So secure in our persons and papers. What is it? The
effects.
The effects and papers and effects. I don't think they have the right to do that. I have to tell you, I am enormously reassured to hear that Apple had to create a way to get into this thing,
and they refused to do it. They didn't do it, and they won that one in court.
So here's the thing: when you want to look at these things, you look at a little case like this where it's clear. It's clear that, to my mind, that they have no business forcing him to unlock his phone. It's his property, and it's just clear to me. So the question then becomes, what happens if you've got the phone of somebody who's a terrorist, and let's just go right to the top, right? And there's an atomic bomb ticking someplace. Do we have the right to open that person's phone? And in that particular case, if the evidence was solid, I would say that you probably do have the right. But if by doing that you enabled the technology for anybody to open your phone, then the risk of the atomic bomb is not as great as the risk to society if this invasion of your privacy becomes so automatic and so common that Americans are afraid to speak their own minds, write what they think, and so on. That is the ultimate threat to the republic. I have no misconceptions about the damage that terrorism can do, nuclear terrorism, needless to say. But there's nothing that a terrorist could do that could destroy this country. But the lack of faith in our privacy and our ability to speak our minds and think our minds and do what we want to without being constantly surveilled by the state or this device, which knows everything about us, including where we are and what we say. My phone could be recording this right now for all I know. I'd have no way of knowing if it wasn't. If we get to the point where we think that we are constantly under surveillance, and we better be careful about what we say, that's the end of America, and that I fear more than anything else. So this is a trade-off I'm willing to take.
Hey, Bill,
Steve,
I'm sorry. Can I throw in just?
No, I was just going to say, Steve, do you think when the framers said that we should be secure in our persons and effects, they foresaw the coming of Instagram filters?
Of course not. As genius as they weren't quite that deeply weird. I did want to say this: the ticking time bomb scenario is kind of BS. Because in that situation, Jack Bauer or whoever is on the case is going to use whatever means necessary, eye gouging, finger breaking, whatever, to get the terrorist to unlock the phone to stop the ticking time bomb. And then there's not a prosecutor in the land who would bring charges against him, and there's not a jury in the land that would convict him in case a prosecutor did bring charges against him. Those protections don't exist to protect terrorists. They exist for you and me.
And I've seen this, I've mentioned this before on this program, but I've seen this firsthand in the case of local governance dealing with a district attorney who comes before the Board of Commissioners to request funding, in this case, for what they were calling a digital forensics center. And the digital forensics center is just what it sounds like. They are cracking into phones and computers and figuring out what kind of information is on there for people who ostensibly are suspects or, who are participants in some sort of criminal activity. I think this is far beyond a slippery slope. This is right off the edge of a cliff. When you give people the right to go on these massive fishing expeditions about specific crimes. You pick up a guy who's carrying a small amount of pot and a little bit of THC in his car, doing something wrong, clearly illegal in what he was doing. They didn't mention in the article whether the gun was unlicensed or what, but he had a gun with him. So that's questionable. Does that give you the right then to see if there's anything else on earth that this guy's been doing that's been illegal? And as Bill says, chances are he has been doing other illegal things. But as Steve has previously said, the way the American system of jurisprudence works is you've got to catch me doing it. And I think that's the trouble we have here, is when it's kind of a preemptive form of law enforcement that says, well, while we're in here, why don't we just sniff around a bit and see what else we can turn up? And that's not how our system works. And I think that even in the extreme case that Bill gave of the theoretical nuclear bomb and the terrorist, once that line has been crossed, where is the next line drawn? Who's the next person to say, well, no. You could take the terrorist information, you could force that phone open, but for the guy who was merely plotting a murder, you can't force that phone open. No, I think you can, because clearly he's going to harm somebody. And next thing you know, there's no reason at all why any of us should be able to protect the information on our phone. And in fact, we probably ought to be syncing it to the government cloud 24 hours a day. That just takes care of everything and it'll prevent you from committing any egregious acts. And if you do so, you'll just be vanished cleanly with or without your cell phone. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.